The Irish come after the potato famine of the 1840s, as do people from the northwest of Scotland. They did come in quite large numbers over the years to East Lothian, because East Lothian is, by its nature, it's an agricultural county. So a lot of seasonal work. As long as there was seasonal work available, then these workers would come on a fairly regular basis.
The farming, they move from one stage to the next. It could be just 2 or 3 days in one place and move on.
So it's the same story for any migrant worker. You move from a poor place to a rich place.
Well, the conditions, if you compare it today, is what we would consider not super comfortable. They had cottages, etc. But these accommodations were small, and the tendency would have been to live on top of each other.
These transient workers would be accommodated, if they were lucky, they would be accommodated in the bothy. If you're employed on a 6 months or a 1 year contract, then you would get some sort of accommodation provided. But if you're a day labourer, then that accommodation might be very basic indeed. If you had a family, and if you were lucky, you might get a farm cottage. From the sort of 1840s, 1850s, you see maybe 2-room cottages with a wooden partition in the middle.
When they came to the farm, they had big palaces, they called them. They were just big Hessian bags. And when they arrived, they came to the farm, and if they could get oat straw to put into their mattresses, they always wanted oat straw. If it was barley straw, which was very jaggy and full of ants, they didn't have a comfortable sleep. But that was what they lay on. There was one house, that old house there, was there. That was where they did the cooking. And it was just a farm, a fire, and a bit built out that the heat came out from there, and there was just a metal plate on top of that. And they did their cooking on that metal plate. But I mean, you'd think the place was on fire because the smoke would be coming out, billowing in all directions. And that's how they did their cooking. They just had water outside. They didn't have no inside water. They had separate bits outside, which was just a shed, and that was their toilet. And they had to wash outside and everything. It was really very basic for them. And they went round various farms for that. They would be here maybe 4 months in Scotland.
It is found that, especially in the censuses, that a lot of them seem to have resided in the Nangate area. These workers were indeed paid in kind, and that brings about, the story of why in Scotland, for instance, people eat porridge because oats were given by the sackful, etc., and that is used as food and as sustenance.
You would need to look at what price oats would sell for, but there would be an agreement that you got so many bushels of oats as part of your wage.
And of course, over time, that has changed into actual wages.
People, of course, later are paid in cash. They're paid a daily rate, and that would be, in the 1830s, it's about 9p for a day labourer, depending on your skill. So if you're weeding, if you're cleaning out the slaughterhouse, as at Papple, then it's just a few pence each day. Well, the day labourer is usually selling their muscle or their dexterity. If it's picking potatoes, then 12-year-olds are very good at it because they can pick quickly and nimbly. The sort of skilled workers who might be employed on a short-term basis would be dikers, people who can build. Now, this comes in with enclosure, of course, because you've got to separate off the fields, and you either create them with hedges or you might create them with dikes, stone dikes. So a diker was quite reasonably paid. People who could do that, people who could thatch a farm building were paid better. So whereas those who had no particular skills, who were employed in ditching or weeding or singling turnips, then they're not being paid very much.
I was, as I said, £8.13 I had when I became a tractor driver. I would think the Orraman would probably get about £7.50. The stockman would be better paid. He would, when I was on £8, he would probably be getting about £10. Less than a grieve, but no, between a tractor driver and but they would have to work weekends.
Even if they didn't stay in Haddington, for example, they would move on to stay in Adelaide or in Whittingham and settle down and lay their roots, basically.
People did. If they had a family, then they would, and they could get work, then they stayed. Yes. If they find a level of employment, if they can get a reasonable wage, if they can get a living wage somewhere, then that might be enough for one generation. And then you might find that the next generation moves on. I think it's the same for migrants everywhere. They always hope that the next generation will get a proper job.